Welcome to the Community Music Learning IJCM Conversation Series. My name is Roger Mantie, and together with Alicia Banffy-Hall, we're hosting this podcast series. This podcast, by the way, is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. As a reminder to listeners, this podcast series is a volunteer effort with no financial incentives for anyone. Hitting the subscribe button helps to raise the profile of the series and helps you so you don't miss an episode. We've created this podcast to celebrate the retirement of Don Coffman, who has served the journal for the past 19 years, the past 10 of those as associate editor. So listeners interested in reading more about Don's work and his life are invited to check out a tribute article that will be published in the summer of 2026. For this podcast, we thought it might be nice to hear from a few people who have known Don and can maybe speak a little bit to his career in this more personal medium of the podcast. Joining us here today is Roy Ernst, Professor Emeritus of Music Education at the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, New York, and the founder of the New Horizons program, an association of community bands, orchestras, choirs, that has since 1991 provided participatory opportunities for older adults of all backgrounds and abilities. Roy's work continues today, not only through the hundreds and hundreds of New Horizons ensembles around the world, but through the Roy Ernst Music Initiative, or Institute, I should say, which you can learn more about by visiting his website, royernstmusic.com. Readers interested in learning a little bit more about Roy's story are also encouraged to check out an article by Kari Veblen published in the International Journal of Community Music in 1991. No, that's not right. 2011, I think. Yes, in 2011, and it was, I think, Volume 4, Issue 3. The article's name was Music for Life, an interview with Roy Ernst. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Roy.
I'm very happy to be here.
Now, Roy, you've been retired for just a few years now, let's say.
Yes.
But now it's Don Coffman's turn. He now gets to punch that ticket. Can you tell us a little bit about your connection with Don? When did you first meet and so on?
Yes. Well, I started the first New Horizons music program at Eastman in 1991. And at that time, it was widely believed that older adults would not be able to learn how to play an instrument. And so immediately there was an article in the New York Times, then a feature on the Today Show, and NAMM had provided a grant to help me start the program. And after it was successful and had a lot of publicity, we decided we wanted to expand to other locations. And I negotiated with NAMM. They insisted on a location that had a good music dealer, and I insisted on a location that had a good music educator. And so we were both very happy to pick Iowa City. And so Don was one of the first directors of a New Horizons band. And he was also a co-author with myself and Scott Emmons of a music planning guide. And as the years went by and we started more and more New Horizons programs, people said, all you have to do is follow the guide and you will have a New Horizons program. So Don was a part of that important work. And Don conducted at a lot of New Horizons camps, which were really very enjoyable, and he did a great job. Was very welcome there. And one of the stories I remember about Don is that he was talking about how his New Horizons members always showed up for everything so early. And he was determined that he was going to be the first person at something. And he eventually gave up on that. He said there was always someone there before. So if the gig was at 4 o'clock, people were showing up at 3 o'clock. And Don was there before 3 o'clock, and it still wasn't early enough. So Don was a perfect fit for this. He loved doing it. The people absolutely loved him. And I think of him as one of the pioneers of this. And so
that is fantastic.
I hope Don has a wonderful retirement, and he should reflect on the fact that he has made life better for thousands of people through his New Horizons programs. Talking to New Horizons participants, we find that many of them say it's the best thing that ever happened to them in their adult years, because they belong to something, they have new friends, their brain gets a fantastic workout by playing music, and there's so many good things about it, and Don helped bring that to many, many people.
Well, as you may know, after many years in Iowa City, Don then moved to Miami, and where he sort of finished the second part of his career, or later part of his career. But now I could be wrong, but I believe his plans are to move back to Iowa City. So do you think he should keep active either through playing or conducting? What do you think he should do?
Well, I hope he hasn't forgotten what winter's like in Iowa City, but I know that recently I went back to Rochester, New York for something, and I was quite happy to be leaving Rochester, New York after experiencing that weather for a while. So I have confidence that Don knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. It could have a lot to do with relatives and friends being there. And I would say that that is even more important than weather. And
yes.
So, yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sure that he's going to make a good decision.
Well, do you have, based on your own experience now, having been retired for some time, do you have any last parting words of advice for Don upon his retirement?
Well, Don, I hope you're going to be active in music. I'm quite sure you will be. And, it's one of the best things we can do. And in retirement, it's important to have a purpose. And you can do things in New Horizons, or you can do other things. And there have been articles recently that one of the best things to do in retirement is to learn to play a new instrument. So music is still a really important part of my life. I do some guest conducting, and I play in these little groups that are just much, much fun. So I'm getting as much joy from music as ever.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us here today, Roy. Certainly appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy all the music making, and enjoy, of course, the weather in Florida, which is much better.
I sure will, and best to you, Don.
All right. Hello, everyone. Our second guest for this special podcast episode honoring Don Coffman's involvement with and retirement from the International Journal of Community Music is Nick Coffman. Nick, as you might be able to guess, either from his voice or his name or his appearance, is Don's son. Thanks for joining us here today, Nick.
Lovely to be here, Roger. Thank you.
As you know, Nick, this podcast is it's about honoring your dad's involvement with the journal and the field of community music, not his role as a father or a husband. So, and all the other things that he does or has done. But for listeners who may not be familiar with you and your work and why we invited you here, can you tell us a little bit about your own professional background in life?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I was brought into a musical world quite early by my parents. I did take piano lessons from a young age, although we had a family policy that it was never that I was going to be directly my father's student. I was involved in lessons otherwise, but then later on came into playing bass, and that was a major driver for my life, playing classical music and jazz in particular, until, continuing through my undergrad, in which I was curious about trying to pursue music professionally, or how that was going to influence my life. But ended up, pursuing undergrad in classical bass, and really not certain how I wanted to kind of follow in my father's footsteps. I certainly grew up in the music school in the music building. I knew my way around from a young age, got my way down to the vending machines from his office. And it was a decision for me to try to go into education. Certainly, I'd been involved in community music from a young age, being part of the culture of the New Horizons band. Every snow day or conference day, I'd be in there with my cadre of grandmas in the percussion row, learning it and brought up through that. But it was a decision to try and see if I wanted to go into education, and something I wasn't quite certain of. And so community music became something that really helped shape how I even saw my own professional life, and seeing how it had influenced my family through seeing my father in the community making music, seeing how he interacted with the community based off that role, how that influenced his own professional career, how going to conferences and seeing him present gave me kind of a different perspective with how it could really be meaningful for people to make music. So I started directing the Silver Swing Jazz Ensemble after graduating, and got some more experience with jazz direction through that, and being part of the community section.
And just to interrupt, but
Yeah.
that was that while you were still in Iowa City, or was
Yes. Yep. All that was in Iowa City. Hmm.
All right.
And
at
then
what point did you depart from there?
Shortly after I graduated, my parents moved down to Miami. My father's been at the University of Miami for the last close to 15 years now. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue to follow. It was still kind of figuring out how this approach to music and my professional career was going to really influence my life. So after a short stint near San Francisco, I followed into Miami, and then at my parents' encouragement, went to grad school, where I did both my master's and PhD in music education, continuing to work with the New Horizons band at the University of Miami there as well, continuing to direct the jazz ensemble and being part of that, and letting that influence how I started to do more outreach and work with younger populations, both through education and more of a community music standpoint. And then after grad school, I moved down to Ecuador.
Which seems like a logical move.
I met my wife in the doctoral program, and she's Ecuadorian, so she came back down, and I followed shortly after. So here I was adjunct at a university for a few years, and I currently work at a private school here in Ecuador as the arts department coordinator.
And you're still involved heavily, though, in the field of community music, correct?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a commissioner for the community music activity pre-conference seminar. So we'll be having our every 2 years semi-annual meeting in Toronto this coming summer, and so we're in preparations for that conference.
We're looking forward to hosting you.
Absolutely.
This year,
but certainly, it's had an approach in just how I view my purpose. I mean, my focus was different from my father's, where he was invested in wind ensembles. I, from a young age, took an interest to technology, something that was also nurtured by my father. There's a video of me as a baby sitting at the synthesizer with a microphone making noises. And so that's certainly something that became a lifelong tradition for me as well, but looking to use technology to increase inclusion and taking a different perspective to community music, but trying to see how inclusivity and engagement for all levels of learners is something that can be facilitated through technology.
Listeners who are not regular readers of the journal, hopefully they will be soon if they're not, but they might not be, not every listener might be aware that you have actually co-authored an article with your father that was published in the International Journal of Community Music in 2023, the title of which is Looking Back and Looking Forward, a content analysis of the International Journal of Community Music 2007 to 2022. So for people who might not have read the article, can you tell us a little bit about that and the process of co-authoring with your father?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an opportunity to look back throughout the entire journal and see really how do we continue to define what community music is? How has it been considered before? What practices get involved with that? While there were some other systematic reviews of the journal that look about, the concepts presence or the approaches, but having an idea of, I'm new to the journal, I don't really know what's in this place. What is even community music considered to be on a global scale, and how do I fit within there? And so looking through and trying to understand what areas have you included? What are some ideas that are common between the different places? Clearly, working with adults has been a focus of his for a long time, but you'd find other areas that it was difficult to always imagine if they were really movements or one-off kind of authorship. So the one that surprised me most was this constant thread of metal music within community music. It was something that didn't surprise me when I found about it, but certainly a number of authors who might not even be aware of each other's work that had an opportunity to kind of see, oh, we do have these shared goals and experiences and practices. And so having an opportunity for people to see how that progression of community music and reconsideration of how does community music operate within different contexts, and how might I see the work that I wish to bring to the journal as being something that does relate to existing work and existing research.
Fabulous. Well, as you know, I'm assuming your dad's plans, at least the last I heard, were to move back to Iowa City. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or predictions about how that might go, or suggestions for your dad in terms of what you think he should do upon his retirement back to Iowa City.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly a change even in our own family life to see his retirement. It's something we always anticipated, but considering it was such a large part of how I even saw my life growing up, with coming to CMA conferences or his involvement with the journal, for him to be able to take a step back is certainly a welcome change, and I hope it gives him a different perspective. I know that the band that he started continues to play. I hope there's an opportunity for him to go take his horn and be a part of it, or even if it's in with his baton. He always said his primary instrument was baton. So even if it isn't strict leadership of the band within that formal sense where it was at the university for so many years, to at least be part of that community that he helped nurture, that maybe can be a place of nurturement for him as well.
Yes, well, again, I think I speak on behalf of many people in wishing him very, very well in that. And yes, hopefully he will find the ways to continue to embrace the very thing that has been very much at the heart of his entire professional career, and certainly his involvement with the journal. So thank you so much, Nick, for sharing your thoughts and your experiences, this personalized insight into,
Thank you. It's a pleasure to
what
share.
it would be like. All right. You have a great day, and we'll see you in Toronto.
Okay, looking forward to it, Roger.
All right, bye. Our third and fourth guests for this special podcast episode honoring Don Coffman's involvement with and retirement from the International Journal of Community Music are Brydie-Leigh Bartleet and Lee Higgins. Brydie is one of the current associate editors for the journal, and Lee is the past senior editor of the journal, a position he held for 14 years. For listeners unfamiliar with Brydie and Lee and their work, I encourage you to check out other recordings in the podcast series. We did one with each of them as part of this conversation series. And in those podcasts, you can learn more of their work, their community music involvement, and their involvement with the journal. So Brydie and Lee, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
Thanks very much, Roger.
So our focus today is on Don and his involvement with the journal and the field of community music. Lee, if we can start with you, can you tell us a little bit about when and how you first met Don?
I think I'm right in saying I first met Don at a CMA, Community Music Activity event in Toronto, and that would be in 2000. And I believe I'm also right in saying that on that occasion we were put together sharing a room in the Hall of Residence at the University of Toronto. So I think it was that's how it happened.
And so you just happened to be roommates, and that kicked off a wonderful friendship.
I think that's actually what happened. Yeah, and if you ask Don, because I'm going to say this because I've heard Don himself say it on a number of occasions, and that one of the challenges of that particular week for me was Don snoring. And I'm saying that because he says that, and it wasn't the most. I didn't get the most sleep during that particular seminar, but nevertheless, we became friends during that time.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, Brydie, I'm going to guess, I'm just speculating, but I'm going to guess that you probably did not have the problem of hearing Don snoring. So how about you? How did you how did you first meet Don? What were those circumstances?
No, I didn't have that kind of pleasure. But Lee and I have a similar story in that I also met Don at an ISME Community Music Activities Commission gathering as well. And I stand to be corrected, but I think it might have been Rome. And that was the one that Lee was actually leading and facilitating and convening. And I have a suspicion that's the first time I met Don. But, I had to think hard about it because it's hard to pinpoint, because I feel like Don has always been there. He's been such a mighty figure of our field. I can't imagine one of these gatherings or any of our major community music network sort of meetings without him. So it was kind of hard to pinpoint. But he and I immediately struck a connection because Don had travelled to Australia and spent some time down south studying some of the New Horizons groups and some of the initiatives for older adults. And so he was quite keen to talk to a fellow Aussie and brag that he'd actually travelled all the way, not only down south, but very far south, and made that effort. And from then on, I've always loved any kind of connection and conversation I've had with Don, and we've always had that sort of Aussie bond there as well.
And Brydie, and Brydie, if I'm right in remembering, and I think Don met somebody from New Zealand or Australia called Monty.
Yes.
And he did an exchange. He did an exchange, didn't he?
Yes, that rings
and
a bell.
I think he met Monty at the Toronto event.
Well, there you go. These wonderful threads that get woven over time through relationships.
Well, Lee, Don started out on the editorial board, but he was on with the journal for 19 years, but it's been 10 as associate editor. What were the circumstances that led to him becoming associate editor?
Oh, yeah. So I know that the journal, and I can't really recall the exact year but you say it's 10 years ago, right? So it would have been like 2016. The journal had, developed, since its inception, and really, we were looking for, in terms of associate editors, and I think Don came on at the same time as Brydie. I think that's right. And we were looking for two people that brought different skills and different perspectives to the role. There was I kind of from the UK, sort of heading up the journal, and there was a real recognition that obviously that's a specific inheritance, a specific perspective. And Don came on board alongside Brydie in that, and brought with it a number of key things, I think, which complemented the team, because I think it was very much trying to create a team. And one, which we may talk about later, is a kind of a sort of a laser precision and sort of accuracy and sort of eye for detail. And also from the United States, this kind of this other kind of experience of community music. So it was a very conscious choice, and also and a conversation that enabled that to happen.
Very nice. Well, Brydie, so you've worked with Don basically, essentially his entire time as associate editor. So without putting you too much on the spot, I mean, how have you two managed this working relationship in terms of splitting roles and whatnot? Can you say a little bit about that?
Well, I think it'd be fair to say Don's done all the work. and that I say in jest, but actually also in seriousness. Don has given the most phenomenal service to our journal. He's largely been the handling editor. So the person at the coalface who is liaising with all of the authors on a day-to-day basis, as well as the reviewers. And I loved Lee's word precision. He has done that with such precision and professionalism, but I think also with wisdom. You know, when you're in that position and you're accepting articles and deciding whether they should go on to the next stages and liaising with all of us, you need to have a very good grasp of the field. And you need to have someone who brings wisdom and experience and an understanding of how it differs across the world and how different perspectives might be valuable to advance our field. And I think Don has just brought so much wisdom and perspective to that kind of position, and has really just done such a phenomenal job in making all of that run very, very smoothly. You know, he really epitomizes the word service, but also hospitality in terms of how we are welcoming and sort of honoring those principles of our field in terms of how we move forward. So he's been such a pleasure to work with. My role on the journal has been slightly different, and I've been interested in special issues and a raft of other things. And as Lee said, those are sort of complementary perspectives. So I think the field and the journal is all the better for Don's wisdom and experience in particular, and professionalism.
Well, yes, and I just want to maybe complement that with, you know, you're speaking to all of his service, which is just insurmountable. I mean, it's just so much service that he has given to the profession and the way that he has mentored everybody. But he also has been a really important researcher in his own right. And so I'm just wondering, you know, again, if maybe throwing it out to the two of you, how might you describe, you know, his contribution to the ongoing growth and evolution of community music? Lee, what do you, I mean, he's obviously operating in a very different space in the US than your background in the UK. So, I mean, how would you describe that?
I think Don brought a kind of a strong level of both research and scholarship to the field at the time of its early growth. You know, there was an American kind of tradition of PhD training, which he had, and I recognize that can be quite specific and very kind of developed, I think, in a way very kind of rigid in some sense and robust in different ways that's maybe from a European experience. It's different in that sense, and I think at the stage when the field was kind of getting on its feet, getting its scholarship and beginning to find its way, I think Don brought a gravitas to that really was something to look up to, really. And so there's that which is in the broader sense that when I reflect back, I think you can see that if you look at the kind of past papers and stuff from the CMA and article, and then I think from a US specific perspective, he also threw open some doors. Now he was, you know, New Horizons, which Brydie's already mentioned, you know, those things were, and adults, you know, learning with adults and androgy, I can't. That's his thing.
Andragogy.
Yeah. Andragogy, yeah. So bringing those sorts of ideas and concepts forward, and I think in that sense, kind of pushed open the doors to kind of bringing on board maybe North American scholars that were perhaps working in these ways, and you know maybe wasn't aware of this idea or this umbrella term community music in some sense. And I think Don really did provide some pathways for North Americans to flow through, and at the same time some pathways and things for the wider group globally to look towards.
Yeah, no, that's yes. As I'm listening to you put that out loud, I mean, it's like, yes, that's exactly right. Brydie, what are your perspectives on that?
Oh, look, I completely agree with everything that Lee said. I think that's a beautiful perspective of Don's legacy within our field more broadly. I think I will always associate Don with his work with New Horizons and older adults. And I think that is a really significant contribution to the field, that if you ask people around the world, like I asked one of my colleagues here in Australia, Helen English, who works in that space, about Don Coffman, and she immediately recognises the influence that he's had in the field with that particular demographic. And I think these generational aspects are really interesting to look at in community music. If we think about rapidly aging populations around the world and what we now know about the benefits of creative aging to stave off cognitive decline, but also to stave off the growing social isolation that older adults can face in life, I think this work has real importance, and I think Don really paved an important way for that work that many others have then taken up since. So I think that's a real legacy piece. And then I think Don has just taken an interest in the evolution of our field. If you look at the article he published with his son a couple of years ago, I think 23, which did a content analysis of all of the issues of our journal, I think that was a really interesting contribution to see, how things have changed, who's been writing about what. And I think that reflects Don's broader interest and commitment beyond his own pet areas to the field's development. And I think that's a really significant contribution that I'm grateful to him for making to our field.
Absolutely. And I would definitely encourage listeners to check out that article, because it really gives you a nice sort of zoom out overview of the journal's history of publication. So switching gears a little bit, as you both know, or maybe you don't, Don is planning to move back to Iowa City, where he founded one of the first New Horizons bands. And not that either of you, I think, are retiring anytime soon, at least to my knowledge. Maybe Lee has plans, I don't know. But do you have, I don't think so.
We might be dreaming of it, but
I know, exactly.
maybe not
Yes,
quite yet.
That's right. We're all thinking about it. So do you have, when we imagine ourselves retiring, I mean, do you have any advice or well wishes for Don upon his retirement?
Well, I guess to really be in the moment, I suppose. I mean, I certainly saw a big switch. I remember there's a few things really, but I remember Don moving from Iowa to Florida, and all of a sudden he had the hat and the whole outfit went on. I mean, it was like a whole different thing, right? So we know of Don. We know Don can catch the vibe of the context he's in and the environment. So we know that he can, and we also know of Don, of the great connection with his family that he's got. We know that because for many years now, his family have joined him at the events, certainly that I've seen him at. And also not only his wife and his son, but also his daughter-in-law, and then the grandchildren, if I remember rightly, as well. So I think when he moves back, I think there's a real, just be in the moment, be in that family kind of space. And I am sure he will completely just embrace that.
I think you're probably right. Brydie, what about you? Have any wise words of wisdom?
Well, I just wish Don well. He has had an amazing and remarkable career and been so generous to so many generations and so many students and so many colleagues and mentored so many people. And if you think of the ripple of effect of that, it is huge. So I think he has well and truly earned the right to do whatever he wants, however he wants, whenever he wants. And as Lee said, I think if you ever ask Don about his family and his grandchild in particular and being a grandfather, his face just lights up, and he indulges me by sending me cute photos. And so I hope that he'll enjoy the freedom away from administration and academia, to be able to travel and spend time with family. I know he enjoys being healthy, and I see in his Christmas newsletters he sends, there's running and things involved. And I hope that he might consider a return trip to Australia. We have plenty of beautiful beaches and lovely places to walk and hike, and also maybe even make some music. So maybe I might throw that one on the cards. My wish is for him to be able to have the freedom to travel if that is what he desires. But I just wish him well and thank him so much for all his incredible service.
Well, thank you for that, Brydie, and thank you, Lee, as well, both of you, for your time here today and all that you've shared, and certainly to Don, on behalf of all of the authors and reviewers you have interacted with and supported over the years. From all of us, our very best wishes for a happy and well-deserved retirement.